Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to Zwift, a fitness journey, and I'm getting ready to kick off on my first ever time trial, and here we go. Approaching starting line. Apparently I'm not even on it yet, but I think I see where the starting line's going to be. Alright, and off we go. So, first ever go at a time trial. It's not something that I'm terribly worried about on what my overall time is. For one thing, I'm in that E category. For another, it's not exactly the shortest route that I'll have been on. But as I kick off on this one, in order to get passed by my first rider, there is no drafting, so that's going to be different. I have a different bike today. I actually have my, for the first time actually, this is my time trial bike. It is better rating for flat territory, and this is mostly flat. You can see we've got a different look at the map view. Really like how that is set up. And then I've also got my different setup on everything I'm looking at. I really like how this is set up compared to the average just go out and ride type scenario. Did a little warm up beforehand, but not a massive warm up, so really got to get my legs up and going. Of course, if you saw the final episode of the Cycling's March Madness a couple days ago, you would see that I wasn't feeling so great. My foot a bit hurt from soccer. It's still bruised, but my foot's fine. Body is still ever so slightly off from where I'd certainly like to be at this point in time. We have just under 17 kilometers till the finish, so this is going to be going a good long while. About an 18k ride overall. The wattage is okay at this point, but not fantastic. I know cadence is also slightly low at this point in time. Well, anyway, so I'm gonna get this thing going. Let's see, am I purple while D is yellow? It's D and E groups, so I'm obviously a bit below most everybody else. As we're kind of all over the place. In fact, the group behind me, a couple D riders, on the verge of passing me up, but that's okay. Not worried about that. Anyway, what I am worried about is what else I'll be doing today, besides wasting my energy early on in a time trial by doing the punishment can. It's been a while, especially with the Cycling March Madness. It's been a little while since I've had the opportunity to give you updates on where I'm at physically. This is the 6th week since I started this series, so a month and a half into it, and it's been a little roller coaster of ups and downs in terms of immediate noticeable gains, comfort, pickup in pace, improvements, but then also stagnation, where kind of the initial body going, whoa, what's this? And quickly adapting to it, versus now progressing at some sort of steady pace along the way. So, how much progress have I made? Well, let's find out. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the voiceover to go through that. We'll get some actual data today on what sort of physical progress I've made. Obviously on the road a lot faster than I was, and that's a good thing. But got a long ways to go in both regards. So let's get to it, and I'm gonna keep on chugging along. 15.5k to go on the time trial.
The only previous check-in I did was at the end of the first week. I'm now in the middle of my 6th week on Zwift. So it's definitely time to check back in and see where I'm at, what kind of gains I have made so far, how much ground have I covered, and how much further I have yet to go. Believe me, I have a long ways still to go at this point. Also, rate of progress has clearly slowed. Something's got to give if I'm going to continue on, and I think part of that is I'm starting to develop some more muscle mass, which I really didn't expect much, because I do have strong legs. My legs are huge compared to the rest of my body already. And it was there's a couple things that I found odd in regards to that and my numbers, but we'll come back to that. Let's go ahead and dive in. We'll start with my progress on Zwift itself. I'm still level 7, but moving towards level 8. I'm surprised how much longer it's taking level by level already, considering I'm just level 7, but there's only, 50 levels? But I kind of figured it would be pretty quick and easy to get through the first 10 to 15 anyway. They really only did that for about the first 5 levels, and then it just rapidly decreases the rate at which you level up after just that small amount. So it's taken a while to get through level 7, and still have a little while yet just to reach level 8. And the achievements, the accomplishments, are the obvious ticket. They're where you get huge chunks of XP, and just riding by itself, the XP is so slow to gain versus the levels that you gotta cover. Now, in terms of those achievements, I'm up to 19 already out of 76. I mean, that comparatively to the levels is what you would expect at this point in terms of knocking out a bunch of easier ones, and then you get into harder ones as time goes on, and it takes longer to get one by one as you go through. But for now, that's kind of the easy check mark that we've been able to tick off, and again, little surprised that still haven't quite been able to hit that next level. The big one here, though, the one that matters a bit more, is how much power am I putting out. At the end of that first week, my watts per kilogram, that first check-in, was a 1.63. It's definitely increased from there, and that's fantastic, but not in a drastic sort of way. It's at 1.81 now. The only real good news, though, was that at the end of my second week, it hadn't improved. At the end of my third week, I had my first instance of my body kind of rejecting what we were up to, and it had actually decreased that week. But after recovering and being able to go forward, I started to see an increase beginning in week 4. That was the first time we saw an increase from whatever my base output was. Week 5 and week 6 have both seen small incremental increases, but it's now at 1.81. It's not a major difference, but it's definitely going the right direction. But it's still much lower than what I would have expected, especially with how I am compared to a lot of others on Zwift. A little surprised that I'm just not pushing out the watts that I feel I should be. Now, the health monitor targets, my daily intake on calories was about 2,000. And without breaking down everything, what I take in, even though it's really common and typical to eat processed foods and fast food on a very frequent basis in the US, I don't. I'll have fast food once to maybe twice a month, and then small quantities. I haven't drank soda in years, except when I'll get that order of fast food. My wife and I will share a single soda and end up taking probably 2 to 3 sips each, and then the rest gets thrown out, meaning 3/4 of it goes down the drain. So a few sips of that sugary drink once, maybe twice a month. I drink water, beer, or wine. Mostly water. The beer and wine part, generally I'll have about 1 to 2 beers on like a Friday night, or a couple glasses of wine. Usually, each week, not always, but that's it. So light drinking, and then just water. Lots and lots of water. I can't say that it's 0%, but I nearly don't eat beef. I'm not diehard when it comes to my carbon footprint, but I care enough that I make an effort. And if you don't know your meats, beef by far, like miles beyond everything else, is heavy impact on the environment. What it takes to raise cows versus pigs or chicken or goats is drastically harsher on the environment. And again, like I said, I don't have like a zero beef diet, but it's pretty dang close. And at least 75-80% of the time, if presented the option, I opt for something else. And I'll stay away from that. I don't eat a ton of meat, regardless, whether it's beef or otherwise. I have a wide variety in my diet. My wife's from the Philippines. She kicked me out of the kitchen on our second date, and I've not frequented there since. She does the majority of the cooking. There's some American food, but mostly a wide array of dishes from around the world. Plenty of white rice. I do get a good amount of grains. I know for a fact that I eat too much peanut butter, which is a common thing in the U.S. It does have a bit of a fat content to it, so it's not great. All in all, though, a 2,000 calorie diet shouldn't give me the issues that I have with my weight, with some extra fat on my body. However, my body just has really poor metabolism, and no matter what different thing I've tried, I've not been able to kickstart my metabolism in many years. And it's really been like that for a decade and a half since my metabolism really started to slow down, and has never treated me well since. Meanwhile, my wife out-eats me every day of the week, and she is like 103 pounds. She eats and eats and eats, and just no issues. All in all, we eat relatively well in terms of lots of vegetables, lots of fruits. Outside of Halloween, I don't eat chocolate or candies like that. I'll have ice cream once every 2 months. I don't do those heavy things. Do snack a little bit. Chips. Minor issue with that. But all in all, light. Now, that 2,000 base calorie took me a couple weeks to bring it down. My initial target is just cutting out 100 calories. I've been at about that 1,900 since, and fairly steady there. I'll watch what I'm eating just a bit, cut back just that little bit, and that helps. I may need to make my next step on that. Maybe not another 100 calories down, but maybe another 50, and aim a little bit lower at this point to keep trending in the right direction. But even at 1,900, I am having a hard time losing some weight. Resting heart rate took me that first few weeks, but since then, it immediately took that step in the right direction. Soccer's back to that consistent 2 or even 3 games per weekend, and then the 3 days riding, the combination of those, my body's gotten back into that athletic mode. My resting heart rate base was a 71. It's now a 66. And that happened kind of overnight into that 3rd to 4th week. Sleep. For a long time, I was averaging about 7.5 hours a night. And when I first started, I wasn't getting that. I was getting about 6.5 hours per night. I was not sleeping well for a period of time there. I finally pushed it to 7 just in the last couple weeks. That's improved. And actually right now, so far this week, I've been getting 8 hours a night, and that's the best I've gotten in quite some time. Stress levels have been good, have been steady. I'd rate myself a 7 out of 10. I certainly have stress in my life. Managing a business, managing the channel, managing life. There's a lot going on. And managing COVID, good times. But 7 out of 10 is I'm good. I'm confident. I have stress, but it's not overwhelming type stress. So I've been hanging out right around that. And when I first started 6 weeks ago, I was a little bit stressed. When I entered, I rated myself at a 6. Now on to the gains. What have I picked up? What has changed? I set my base as a 180 on the weight, but it was actually a 179. Right now it's a 174. Still close to 175. It's just edging down into that 174 range, but 5 pounds lost. Not bad. 5.5 weeks. I'd like to be at or just above that pound per week. And it feels like it's slowing down at the moment. So hopefully I can pick that back up. But yeah, 1 pound per week's not bad. I think that's a decent target for a good while. I think that's a healthy weight loss. BMI started at 29. It's down to just under 28.5. So it is trending in the right direction. I'm losing about a 1/10 per week on that. My body fat was a 25.3, just into the obese and not just overweight. 25 is kind of the trigger point, at least on the health program I'm using on Our Belief. It's now down to 24.4, so it's come down almost a full point, 9/10 down from where I started. That was, again, the most worrying category when I first started, as it was the only one that was officially in that obese category. Now it's pretty far away from there, so I'm down to just solidly overweight, kind of throughout. The visceral fat started at 11. It's still 11. It doesn't use tenths. It's just whole numbers. So when that triggers and goes to a whole number, that'll be great. Love to see that hit 10 here at some point. But it's still at that 11. So I'm definitely seeing gains. They're fairly steady, and actually the more I look at it here, the more steady it actually appears. I feel like it's slowing down on me, but for one thing, this week isn't done yet. I still have another session later this week, and so there's that as a factor, and that seems to always be my healthiest point, is the end of the week, because then I have the weekend, and even though I have my soccer games, that's where I also have larger amount of snacking, and that's where I do my beer or wine. Calorie intake's a little bit higher on those days. Friday in particular, as relax and enjoy the weekend a little bit and let loose. Don't go crazy, don't go wild, but it makes a difference. For example, this Friday, my wife and I are getting together with a couple of friends, and we're making our cheesecake, they're making their cheesecake, and we're going to try each other's cheesecake. That's not going to be great for my numbers, but I'm not overstressing it, not at this point. I'm not on the full-blown hardcore diet for a couple of reasons. One, I really want to focus on what I could do on the bike, and I don't want to just lose all the weight from a diet. I've gone down that path, and I know how to lose on that path, and I know what calorie intake will kind of get me there, and I'm not there right now. I'm still above that mark. I want to do that in time, maybe. But at the same time, I know that the harder I'm working on the bike, the more calories I'm going to need to actually support that and still have the energy to do what I'm doing. So finding the balance is going to be a trick. But for now, I don't want to add stress into my life, because cutting those calories out and making my body uncomfortable is going to add stress. And I don't want to add that stress right now. I want to succeed at this. And so far, so good. I mean, how many workout programs, I don't know the actual data, but in particular in the US, where where on the inside we don't often see it. I lived out of the country for a few years. I lived abroad, and I really had that chance to reflect and see how culturally the world is very different than it is inside the U.S. We have a very skewed lifestyle to anywhere else. And there are some challenges that we make for ourselves that are ingrained in our culture, in our society. Some stresses that we place on things. We make things more difficult, right? Let me give you a couple just short, quick examples. One, our fast food and or other mass-produced food items and the quantities of those items. Those industries spend so much money to make our politicians, our media, in a position to ignore the number one killer in the U.S., which is heart disease. We have a terrible diet. But we also have a for-profit healthcare system. When you start throwing all of these things together, there's this giant veil over our eyes into the reality of the situation that we face. And without going too much into the politics or anything like that, we do not take care of ourselves properly in the U.S. There are people who do. There are individuals who do. And others look at them like they're crazy. And the effort that has to go into it because of the processed foods and the marketing campaigns that are constantly in your face, and you go to a place like, say, McDonald's and order a regular meal. If you eat your regular meal, you don't have to have a large size or anything like that. Your regular meal is already 900 to 1,000 calories or something like that just for a single meal. We go overboard. The motto in the U.S. is bigger is better. And it's so hard to go against the grain in that. Anyway, all of that being said, I feel like I've got extra challenges to overcome in order to succeed in something like this. And so I'm taking it a step at a time. And where most diets or fitness programs that people go on, they stop in 2, 3, 4 weeks and give up. So I'm already happy that I'm 6 weeks in and going strong and improving. And despite it being a small audience, and for those that are here, thank you. Appreciate it. I really do, because you are helping me with this journey. And I hope that in some way, somehow, that I'm helping you as well. I really do hope that that's the case. I know that some of the audience is also on Zwift, and that you are going through your own fitness journeys there. And many of you at this point are well ahead of what I'm accomplishing. So I really like to see if I can catch up in some way, some form, somehow.
Alright, folks. I'm absolutely gutted at this point. I got nothing left for even for a proper cool down. Oh, that was so exhausting. And I was not last. I was very much in a battle near the back. I'm actually pleasantly surprised there were 4 of us bunched up there together. The last, Jeffrey, who finished just a few seconds ahead of you overall, had been the one who started behind me. It worked as that carrot that whole time. For me, being their carrot anyway, I had others, my carrot. I caught both. And then as soon as I passed them, they both got second wins and were able to push on and re-overtake me, where I was consistent through most. The only place where I wasn't very consistent was the small hills. Fairly flat course, only 28 meters climbed over the 18K, but where we did have the hills, I pushed. Kind of learned when I put in a little more cadence through there, I tend to do a little bit quicker. Those climbs can just drag on and on and on. But if you hit it with a little pace, a little tempo, and maintain a high cadence, you get through them so much faster. So that's what I did. I upped the cadence in each of those areas, pushed a little harder. Back half, though, in my, oh gosh, what would that be? 19th of 21 gears, where I had been most. The whole first half pretty much was in that gear. I had to back off by 1 gear. I just couldn't push out the watts anymore. You can see from the checkpoints that my heart rate steadily climbed stage by stage, and then ultimately at the end, the watts were slowly falling. So heart rate up, watts down as time went on, and that's what allowed those couple of riders that I had passed to get that second win and push on past me, and then end up finishing, well, one of them just behind me, one of them a little further ahead on that overall, and that was really down to the last 4K because I had them beat. Otherwise, they were the ones that presumably had started just in front of me. That came all the way from 30 seconds back to going just past them, and then off they went.
A quick look at some final results before I wrap up this video, and I'm going to leave this one with a question. 30 people completed the time trial. There was only about 7 from the E class, and I was right in the middle of that group. Behind all the D class riders, the lowest one was right there in 25th. I finished 27th out of 30, so that was that. But 2 things really, really stand out to me. Out of literally everyone, out of all 30, I had the lowest wattage output, but didn't have the lowest time. Also, compared to everybody else, and of course we're only seeing the bottom end of the chart, but you could see that those with the heart rate monitors, which is the majority. I mean, it was probably 25, 26 out of the 30 had heart rate monitors. My average heart rate, in terms of how hard I was working, put me probably 10th out of the 30, and significantly higher than the bottom half. Significantly higher. There's a clear group of those who worked hard, from about 155 to a 170 average, who were motoring. And then it drops off to those who are just riding and in the low 20s or 120s. 30 beats per minute, 35 beats per minute. And I have strength in my legs. I have muscular legs. And I'm motoring along, pedaling like crazy with resistance. And I'm at 144 watts, lowest of anyone. Right next to me, the rider who was just behind me on track, Jeffrey, for the entirety. I was holding them at near 40 seconds most of the way, and then just at the end, they really turned it on the last 3 to 4 kilometers, and that gap went from just over 30 seconds, where it had been holding for quite a while, to the 15-second advantage that they finished with, which had them about 15 seconds behind me. So they went from about 32 to 15. So they gained about 17 seconds just over the last 4K. So they were pushing there. And yeah, that might have upped their average slightly. But all in all, their wattage output was a 172. I was a 144. Like, that's drastically different. Drastically. That's a massive difference. How is it that, like Bundy, for instance, 120 average on the heart rate, that they're not even working, they're just casually riding, is putting out more wattage than I'm able to do? I'm still confused by that, because I feel like I'm working really hard, and now I have some evidence to support that. The heart rate part, I'm chugging along, and for a good chunk of the day I was at 70 to 75 on my cadence, and then later on, especially when I couldn't push the harder gear anymore and backed off just slightly, I was doing 80, 85, and even into the mid 90s on my cadence. I was flying along, but I was only doing that 30, 31K per hour. and overall slower than everybody else. So those who are familiar with Zwift, please do clue me in. Why is it that I'm working so much harder than most of this field, yet I'm way, way down the order? Where is that gap? Are my legs really that weak, or is there something off about this? Because clearly I was working much harder than Bundy, and yet I'm behind them, and behind Iceland, and behind Plamondon. All those riders that I was around, like, we weren't even close to each other, and I'm the only one. As you look up and down this chart, there are consistencies until you get to me. I'm the one who is completely miles off from everybody else. Those who worked hard like I did, heart rate wise, they had similar wattage as you kind of go up the chart. And then I'm at the end of the list. Pray tell, let me know what is going on with that. What is the difference? How is it that I'm working so hard and yet still can't manage to put out any watts? I don't have stick legs. And they're motoring hard, and I'm getting plenty of resistance and managing what feels like, is my cadence that far off? I mean, is a typical cadence in the 90s? Let me know. That's going to do it for this one. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there, and bye for now.